Hi, everybody. I'm Tamara Zoner.
And I'm John Davis.
Welcome to Spirit Cafe.
Come in, sit down, and
grab a cup of love.
A Spirituality Without the Guilt podcast. Hey, guys, it's me, John Davis, and I am here in the balmy weather of Akron, Ohio. 3 feet of snow outside my window, and yesterday was 8 degrees. And oh gosh, it feels so good, right? Anyway, we have an amazing guest today. I'm very excited. I met Ken a couple weeks ago. I think it was a couple weeks ago, and he and I kind of hit it off and had some great conversation. I'm really excited for him to share some of the cool things that he's doing down there in that cold climate that he's in. And but before we do that, let me bring in my compatriot of compassion, the lovely and powerful Tamara Zoner. Hello, Tamara Zoner. How are you?
Great, John. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm actually enjoying this morning. I'm having my big mug of coffee, and I'm just kind of having a slow, easy morning. How about you?
Nice. Good. Well, I've been singing all morning, so I'm feeling good.
You've been singing all morning?
I performed this afternoon for a senior community, so spread a little happiness, spread a little song,
Yeah. Well, Tamara, this is our lovely friend, our new friend, Ken Wilcox, and Ken is he has an amazing story, and I think we just let Ken. Why don't you tell us about yourself? Tell us what you're doing.
Sure. Well, I'm here in Saint Augustine, Florida, which I share with both you and Tamara, is the oldest city in the nation. 453 years ago, the Spanish arrived on our shore, and this was the first place that a Catholic Mass was held, and we know exactly where it was held. It had a little bit of a different history than the Northeast. The Spanish were, first of all, they were more open to interracial. They were both Africans, they were Irish, they were Italian, they were Jewish people that landed here. They were more open to the indigenous people, and they treated them a little bit better. Not great, but a little bit better. And this is also the place of the first community of free Africans in the hemisphere was, Fort Mose. So we have an amazing history. 10 years ago, I was asked to come down to be the minister of the New Thought Church here in town, the Center for Spiritual Living. It has been here for almost 40 years. They needed a new minister. I was up in Atlanta. I had a little center or a little church in Atlanta. They found me and they asked me to come down. I was reluctant to come because I was doing quite well. I was in the wealthiest area of Atlanta, Buckhead.
Oh, yeah, I know Buckhead well. I know Buckhead very well.
I was reluctant to give that up, but I came down, and the other thing was the center had just suffered a Ponzi scheme. And so bad, in fact, there's a national TV show about what happened here on, I think it's called American Greed, that talks about the Ponzi scheme that happened here. So this community was devastated. I came, I did my talk, and afterwards, I saw the people here, just how loving and kind they were and how friendly they were. And that was kind of new to me because a lot of New Thought places aren't that friendly and kind. And so I thought, gosh, this is a loving place to be. And if they want me to come, I'm going to come, and I'm going to do my best. Now, the other thing that I had to keep in mind is I'm a gay man, and this congregation is 97% straight. And I've all my adult life, I lived in big cities, Washington, San Francisco, and Atlanta. And I didn't have any idea how a little small town would welcome me. Well, the truth of the matter is they just opened their arms. And I guess I think I'm kind of a bull in a china shop. I think I just kind of burst my way through. And I got elected to be president of the interfaith community here in town. And so we have these events where we have Muslim and Buddhist and Hindu, Jewish, Christian, and we have interfaith Thanksgiving services. When one of the police shootings happened, we wanted to have a healing service. And so Spirit told me that we needed to do it at the Catholic Basilica downtown, where the Pope one time spoke.
Mm.
And the other ministers are like, "You're crazy. They're never going to let you come." Guess what?
They let you come.
We were there. Where the Pope spoke, probably not. I think they put him up on a little special thing. But anyway, we were there. And so we do really great stuff. Right now, you may hear in the background some Hindu chanting, because my wonderful friend Swamini Radhakananda, she runs the Hindu mission here, and she wanted to have a lovely retreat out in the rural areas. And unfortunately, her neighbors saw her dressing in orange robes and found out that she was a vegetarian. And so in their minds, that equaled terrorist. So they got together and they forced her to close the mission. And so when they did that, we opened our doors and said, "You want to teach classes? You can come here and teach classes."
That's lovely.
That is beautiful.
Yeah, when the Muslims, they have a little mosque here, and they were being picketed on Friday prayer services. And so the interfaith group got together and said, that's not American. It's not American to harass people who are just wanting to pray. So we organized prayer shills and stood there so that they could get into their mosque without being disrupted.
Well, I'd say it's not only not America, I think it's not humane, because we as humans have to respect and love each other and our various beliefs, and I think that's what you're doing down there. Say it again.
Well, it's like,
But that's what we're founded on. That's what it's all about, right? A whole bunch of different people coming together,
mixing together. Yeah,
it's a melting pot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I love what Helen Keller said. Helen Keller said, "Every time someone prays, good is done."
Mm-hmm.
So, we should be encouraged. And right now, let me tell you, we need as much prayer as we can get.
Right. It's interesting. In the Bible, it says that, in my Father's house, there are many mansions or rooms. And, to me, that just means many different ways of getting there, and there's lots of different religions and lots of ways to get there, and you can come there, but it's all part of the same thing. And I just watched a near-death experience interview on the Love Covered Life, and the title of it was God Doesn't Care What Your Religion Is. And
right.
And I watched it. I was like, this is exactly what I believe. This is it, that all the religions are, in my opinion, is people trying to wrap their thought around something that's so simple they can't understand.
A riddle. What is it? A riddle of simplicity. That's how Ernest talked about a riddle of simplicity. And I like the Dalai Lama. Just be kind.
Yeah.
That's all we need.
Yeah. So Ken, for our listeners who aren't familiar, if there are some, with New Thought specifically, would you tell us what that means and how it's different from other churches?
Our teaching is science of mind. That's what we used to call ourselves until people kept confusing us with Scientology. So we switched over to Centers of Spiritual Living. We bubbled up in the Northeast almost 100 years ago. This guy, Ernest Holmes. And Ernest Holmes, he had studied Christ, the example of Christ. And what he honed in on was that Christ used affirmative prayer. That this is how he prayed, and this is how he got things done. So our whole approach is to pray affirmatively, not begging and pleading. Oh my goodness. When I go to the interfaith service and I love these guys, when I hear my beloved Christian friends, some of them, they just are whiny and complaining. And I think poor God has to listen to this stuff. It's like being trapped. I remember I had to take a long road trip with my 13-year-old niece who was going through a really whiny stage of her life. And I was contemplating a tuck and roll maneuver to get away from her. And I have to think God has the same feeling. We believe, we stand upright, we announce our good, not begging and pleading, right. Because the answer to the prayer is in the prayer.
Right.
We're the ones that have to be convinced that the good is around us. And then I take it a step further, because I think, unfortunately, New Thought really focused just totally on the individual consciousness. I think that we then have to know that we're powerful, and then we have to start praying for others. Because to me, this was the example of Christ. Almost all the way through his mission, he prayed for others. And so I think this is how we step into our power. We pray for others. I also, now we're not totally, we take a lot of our lessons from Christianity, but we also bring in a lot of other teachings as well. But I love how Christ stepped into his power. And John, you can correct me, but I think it was at when he turned the water into wine. And I love that because his mother had to encourage him to do it. You know, he was happy with his friends. Can you imagine? His mother and her friends had drank all the wine. She goes to him and says, "Bring jars of water, not one jar, jars of water." And can you imagine trying to satisfy your Jewish mom and her friends? Like, I want a fruity Chablis here, a dry Chardonnay there, something bubbly here. Oh my God, the poor guy.
That's and jars, because they need a lot of it.
Sure.
Well, I want to go back to
the other thing. But sorry, John. Here's the other thing. He was having a good time.
Yes,
he was having a good time when he performed his miracle. And so much of our religious, and it's dour. It's and a lot of Christianity, I hate to say this, wants to beat people up and make them feel as miserable as they can. How can we reach the vibration of spirit if we're making ourselves feel miserable?
Well, let me, Ken, about my reincarnation backstory, as does most of our audience. So I'm going to just kind of bring this out. The man, Jeshua ben Joseph, laughed a lot, all the time, made jokes with people, teased people. He teased his wife. He called his wife Ishti, which literally means wife.
Right.
So he's like, "Come here, wife," right? And he said it lovingly and caringly.
Right. Sure.
But I want to go back to something else you said, which I thought was interesting. The idea of the answers in the prayer. And it's interesting. I have a belief that modern Christian prayer is like New Age affirmation. And I don't believe in affirmations. And the reason I don't believe in affirmation is because I'm a very literal person, and the fact that, to me, the word affirmation means that I'm shoring something up that I have no confidence in. And so I believe in declarations, and I believe you're absolutely right. When you pray, you have to believe, and that's part of the process. And then talking about praying for others, I think it's great to pray for others, but I think the others have to be involved in the process, which is why
if it's going to work,
if it's going to work, right? Which is why in the Bible they talked about Joshua and the disciples passing by the city of Beth-shean, because they knew Joseph the carpenter in Beth-shean, and they couldn't believe that Jeshua, his son, could heal them. So no healings were happening in Beth-shean. So what my memory is that Jeshua and the group hung out on the outskirts of Beth-shean, and the people who believed in him had to come to him, right, rather than him going into town. So, and I think it really does come down to the concept of prayer. Now, I'm going to ask you an interesting question from a very weird perspective.
Okay.
So
nice setup.
This is a story that happened to me at the Maryland Renaissance Festival. I was already very aware of my past life. I was already very much doing the work, but I was still doing my comedy show. And I came walking out of my audience one day, and there was a man at the top of the aisle with his girlfriend. And I knew the man because he was a big fan of my show. And I walked up, and he said, "I wanted to introduce you to my girlfriend. She's got a request." I'm like, "This is weird, coming to my comedy show with a request," right? She says, "Yeah, I've always wanted to read your tarot cards."
Okay.
And I said, "Okay, that'd be great, sure." And I instantly knew that she was sick. I instantly knew she was sick. Right. So we sat down, and I said, "Do you mind if I hold your hand while you do this?" Which is hard for a tarot card reader to do, right? Sure. But right. But she said, "Yeah." So I just held her hand. And while we were doing this, I literally heard the higher consciousness speaking back and forth. And it was, my higher consciousness said to hers, "Are you ready to pass this on?" She says, "Yes, I am." I said, "Then pass it to me and I'll pass it on." And I felt this rush of energy come from her and go right out the top of my head.
Right.
So we finished the reading. It was a fine reading. It was a fine tarot card reading.
Right.
Week goes by. I come walking out of the stage again. I walk up to the top of the aisle and he's standing there without her. And I'm like, holding a phone. He says, "Talk to her." And I, "Hello?" Right? She says, "What did you do to me?" I said, "Well, what do you think? What do you think I did to you?" She says, I think you healed me." I said, "Then that's what happened." Because I believe it's her belief that it's her faith that heals her.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "What did you have?" She says, "Well, I had been given 6 weeks to live with cancer, and your tarot card reading was on my bucket list."
Wow.
So that's that story. The reason I want to ask that story is two things.
Mm-hmm.
Having that higher self conversation.
Right.
I want to know your take on that in itself and hearing that. And two, the concept of why she put a comedian on her bucket list when nobody else knew anything about my story at that point.
Right.
So what's your thoughts there, young man?
Well, the first one's pretty easy, John. Why she'd have a comedian on her bucket list for her spirituality is because Spirit has a wonderful sense of humor. Anything that created sex and middle age has a lot of sense of humor to it. So Spirit likes a good laugh. The first question of like, why were you open to intuition, or why you were willing to step out into intuition? Is that what you were saying?
No, about the whole idea of not physical spoken word, but hearing the higher conversation. I mean, that to me, it was the first time I'd ever heard it that way. And I've done some pretty wacky crap, as Tamara knows, right? I've done some pretty crazy things that have happened to me that are just unexplainable in my life. Right. And when this happened, it was very natural. It seemed very like I was, and I knew what I was saying in my higher self, but I could hear her higher self talking back. So I guess my question is more about that conversation itself, and what is the explanation of me being able to hear the conversation in your mind?
Well, in my mind, I think we all have spiritual DNA, and so basically we have different gifts. So I don't hear Spirit's voice, but I will just get a urge and a need to, and I know if I don't say it, it's just going to explode. We've got a kid in our neighborhood. He's adopted. He's African American, and his parents are Caucasian. And we're dealing with racial issues here. And so this kid is outside every day, and he plays basketball 2 and 3 hours a day. Every day he's out there dribbling his basketball. One of my neighbors complains, but she complains about everything. So, so what? His parents for Christmas got him a skateboard. So now he's practicing the skateboard 2 and 3 hours a day, and he's gotten pretty good at it. So I was walking our 10-pound Pickapoo, who would love to rip the flesh from his ankles if she could get a hold of him. And so I'm walking past him, and he's such a really nice guy. He always says hi. And so I greeted him, and all of a sudden within me came this urge: you've got to compliment him. You've got to compliment him. Now this is a challenge for me, because I'm a gay man, and and I don't know him, I don't know his parents, and so I'm talking to a teenager. So it was a challenge to me, but I just knew I had to. And so what I told him, I said, I saw and hear you playing basketball. I said, you're really dedicated to it, and now you're dedicated to the skateboard. I said, and you've gotten really good at it. I said, you have this discipline to stick with something that interests you. And I said, this is really going to do you good when you get out into the world. You're going to find this is going to really help you get far. And he just beamed.
Mm.
I mean, he beamed. And when he did, I had the realization, this kid doesn't get a lot of compliments.
Right.
You know, the knowing I got is he's not doing that well in school. You know, he's out here because he's trying to get out of the house. He doesn't get a lot of compliments, and nobody had pointed that out to him. And I'm grateful I overcame that fearfulness within me and just shared that knowing with Spirit. So I don't really get a voice, but I get a knowing. That's how Spirit communicates to me, through knowing.
Yeah, yeah, it totally answered it. Tamara, what are your thoughts on all that?
I just think it's so beautiful when people actually listen to Spirit speaking through them and do it. And what a powerful compliment you gave him too. It's not like, oh, you're good at basketball, or oh, you're good at the skateboard. It's you have this drive and commitment that will carry you through your life. That is a compliment he'll remember for his whole life. Somebody could tell him he's good at the skateboard.
Right.
So what, right?
Right.
So that's just so beautiful. Ken, I want to come to your church because
Please do.
like, I'm not a church person usually, but you have
This is
just
not a
such
church.
presence, right? You have such a presence. It's so beautiful. It's all love. It's just gorgeous. And I, like you, more often just know what to say. And John's experienced this. He calls it getting hit with a cosmic 2x4. I say I'm just sharing a message that's for him, you know, that originally I didn't recognize wasn't mine until it feels different. Right. It feels different. And I'll just know that I have to say this thing to someone.
Yes.
And it's like, wow, I'm so wise, but it's not me.
Well, I want to tag onto that, because it really, when you start to recognize it and acknowledge it, it grows.
Right.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
It definitely does.
And that's beautiful. And I started recognizing it in my meetup group, because I run a group that is kind of like a little church once a week.
Sure, of course.
Or once a month. And that's where I would feel like, oh, this is coming through. I need to tell them this. Right. And it's so different from just coaching and listening and reflecting and asking questions. It's like, no, this is a message I have. Or it'll be like, oh, this book, you're supposed to read this book.
Right.
So
really
Ken, you said it's the Center for Spiritual Living?
Yes.
Okay. Now there is one in Michigan, isn't there?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, because I've spoken at it. I've spoken at the one in Michigan. Yeah. And is that near Detroit?
I don't know, but there are probably a couple of them. Yeah, we're very close to Unity.
I've spoken at Unity.
Sure.
I spoke at virtually at Unity of Grand Rapids, and that.
Oh, nice, excellent.
What did I say? I said happiness is your divine responsibility. And
right. So not only your birthright, but your responsibility.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's something. We have to step up and we have to do it. Swallow the bug.
Right.
I did. So a couple of years ago, I got a call from a couple, and they had a tragic story. They weren't members of my congregation at all. And unfortunately, their daughter had been murdered. And they wanted to have a service, but they were not religious. And they did not want any religion. They didn't want a prayer. They didn't want any religion. And so they had reached out to me. I guess somebody had told them I was the kookiest person here in Saint Augustine, try me. And so I realized, I realized that if I didn't do it, nobody else would. That they weren't going to find another minister here. And so I agreed to do it. And then the other thing that they asked that just always horrifies me, they wanted to do it on the beach. We get a lot of requests, especially for weddings on the beach, because people have this lovely idea. It's a horrible place to try to have any kind of service. It's buggy, it's sandy, it's hot. And the other thing people don't realize, it's loud. The ocean is loud and there's no electricity. You can't. So I did it anyway. We got out, we were doing the service. I thought it would just be the family. There were 150 people there. And I was yelling, keep myself. And in the most dramatic part where I was talking about this young woman, a bug flew right in my mouth, right in my mouth. So I had the choice. What do? Do you spit the bug out in front of these poor grieving people, or you swallow the bug? So I swallowed the bug. And sometimes that's what we have to do. We have to swallow the bug and make the most of it.
I love that. I love that analogy.
John, unless you have a direction you want to go, I have a question.
Oh, please. No, please. Yeah, go.
Yes.
So I want to go like way back because I love to learn about what drew people to where they are today. So how did you get into ministry, Ken? What was your background, and what, it's fairly rare for a gay man to go into any kind of religious study. So can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, this is a long and stormy story. It could almost like it was a dark and stormy night. I could start off. I grew up in Macon, Georgia. I was born in 1959. My dad had a heart attack when I was 3 years old, and he, I think, made a promise that he would give up me for the ministry if God saved his life. And so they, just to make me a total neurotic, they shipped me off to a Christian school. It was one of the first Christian schools that it was being created so that for segregation. It was a whites only school, and they were Christian Nazis. They were just the meanest people in the world. And they would bring us in each Sunday or each Friday, and they'd give these talks, or the headmaster would, and he would tell us things like how the whole thing was, like Jesus is coming back, and boy, is he pissed, and he just can't wait to get his hands a hold of you, because he's going to fry you like a piece of bacon for eternity for what you've done.
Oh my.
And the things that they would say, you could do. I remember the first sermon, he said that even if you use words like gosh and darn, that those were actually curse words, and that could send you to hell for eternity. Well, my mom cursed like a sailor. I mean, my mom could out curse anybody. So I knew we were all headed to hell. I knew it. And so, and then on top of it, knowing that I was gay, I was just in just a mess, a neurotic. I come out as gay. I go to Atlanta. I go through college. I become an atheist. For a long time, I was what I would term a loudmouth atheist. If anybody had said anything about religion, I would just argue them into the ground. I mean, I was very popular in Macon, I will tell you. But I got to Atlanta. I accepted myself as gay. Then I got to DC. I was a press secretary for a congressman because I felt like I had to change the world. And in DC, my friends started dying of AIDS. And a whole generation of friends it was like the sand being washed out from under me. And I had a dear friend who was dying. And so here's the oddest thing. I remember the pain was so great. I was in such pain that the thought came to me that this pain cannot be accidental. That this suffering, that if it was just a big bang, if we were just, just biology, that it wouldn't be that painful. That kind of pain had to come with a purpose. So I began to look around. I tried. There was a gay accepting Catholic group. I went there. That didn't work for me. And then I went to San Francisco and I explored all kinds of stuff there. And I went to the Congregationalist, and that didn't work for me. That kind of came close. Then when I got to Atlanta, some friends were with me, and they said, "There's a minister here, and when we hear him talk, we think of you." And I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to hear no GD minister. But they wouldn't shut up about it. I mean, they really, every time they saw me. And so they drugged me to hear this guy. His name was Kennedy Schultz. He was a gay guy. He was meeting in Rich Auditorium, which is Symphony Hall of Atlanta. He had 2 services. They were packing them in. And I remember after his first sermon, when we went to brunch, that was all I could talk about. That was all I could talk about. Now, here's a funny thing. They had been going to see him for maybe a month or two. They continued going for another maybe 2 to 3 weeks, just long enough that I became comfortable enough that I would go on my own. If they didn't, they dropped out and never went again.
Wow.
And so I continued going. I kept on taking the classes. There's a 3-year, you go 3 years to become a prayer leader, and then 2 more years to be a minister. And so I just kept doing it. And here I am.
Wow. I have a quick question. GD,
Sure.
does that stand for geodesic?
We'll go with that.
Oh, that's a good story, Ken. I really love how you came to the conclusion that the pain could not be accidental, that it had to be with
Right.
purpose. And it's
Right.
so beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm always telling people. I'm always telling people things, that everything happens for you. And if you can look at everything that happens as happening for you, and that this is a friendly, loving, supportive universe, it
Right.
changes your whole life experience.
That's what Dr. Holmes, the founder, he says that's our fundamental question. Do we live in a friendly, a loving universe?
Yes.
And to back up, we had talked about like hearing spirits. I was sitting in the auditorium with listening to Kennedy Schultz, and I didn't hear it. It was an idea that popped in my head, and the idea was, you can do this. You can do this. And it scared the bejesus out of me. It
So B, is that the secondary Jesus? Sorry, comedian's mind. I'm sorry. The B Jesus. Come on, B team.
Scared you and you did it anyway. Was that the driver, the fear, actually?
You know what happened? I just kept taking classes because they were keeping me sane. I was working at a public relations firm. I was earning 6-figure income, and I just hated it. I hated it. I one time said it was like being in a dentist chair. And so when I started, especially when I started doing affirmative prayers in front of people, people were so drawn to it that I knew I was doing something good, and I was amazed at it. I'll tell you a funny story about the public relations firm I worked for. I was the head of the office in DC. I opened the office in San Francisco, and then I talked them into opening the office in Atlanta. They were New Yorkers, and they were convinced that civilization ended at DC. And I remember the owner of the firm, Ron Levy, when I finally got him to open the office in Atlanta, he pulled me aside and he was like, "Ken, are you going to be safe in Atlanta?" Because he knew I was a gay guy. And so,
Atlanta's a good place to be.
He was worried. So to open up the office, he cut my salary in half because he didn't think there would be much money. So I got to Atlanta, and I was depressed. It was in the early 80s. A lot of people had died. I didn't know what to do with my life. I felt like I was just wasting my life. So I get to Atlanta, I open this office up, I plug the phone in, that's back that time. As soon as I plug the phone in, I start getting calls. Immediately, the phone was ringing off the hook. And people were misdialing because my number was 1 digit off from the VA job helpline. So it was people calling the VA looking for a job. So they'd call, and I would tell them, it's not the damn VA, and I would slam down the phone all day long. So finally, this was before I got to New Thought. Finally, the idea came to me. It was like, wait a minute now. These people have the courage to look for a job. You need to be doing that. Why don't you try to help them out a little bit? And so I found the right number. And so they'd ring. And so I'd say, no, this is the right number. And then I would say, and good luck, and I hang up. When I started doing that, the phone began to ring off the hook for business. And it was like somebody brought a dump truck of money and dumped it in that office. We became the most profitable office in the nation for that company.
Wow.
I wasn't doing anything. We were so profitable that the owner of the company bought me, well, he leased it for the company, but I had a Mercedes SUV Mercedes. And I remember the day I went and got the Mercedes from the dealership. I was so furious because who gives up a Mercedes? Because I knew if I got the Mercedes, they're going to be stuck in that job. And I remember the poor little salesman, he was trying to tell me all the little things the Mercedes could do. I was like, just give me the keys.
well, Ken, I one of the things that I love about you after talking to you a couple of weeks ago was all of the good things you're doing down there in St. Augustine, all of the various programs and stuff that you've implemented. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's pretty amazing.
It wasn't just me. It was a community. It's been the community. We have two really big programs that I just love. One is just about to come up. It's the Venus Manley Scholarship Program. We had a lovely young woman here. She was about 13, and she had cerebral palsy. And when she was 13, she made her transition. And her mom talked about how much Venus had loved education. So we decided that we would have a scholarship for kids with special challenges, or I call them kids with special courage, because you know, to think you're disabled and you're going to high school. And so we give out 3 scholarships. We bring them in. They present before a panel, and we award the scholarship. We give funding. We give a little bit of money to all of them, and then we stay in touch with them through their college careers, giving them support. And these kids are amazing. They'll break your heart open. And the parents, I remember one mom told me, she said, you know, my kid, she says, he works harder than kids getting A's to get a D. And she said, nobody celebrates him. Nobody recognizes him, but you have, your center has. And it just opens, you just hear these stories, and you just fall in love with these kids. One story that I'll share with you, this young man, he came in, his parents had moved from New Jersey. And when he was about 4 or 5, his body began to be racked with pain. And they noticed that any kind of virus would come along, like a cold, instead of having it for 10 days, he would get it for like 30 days. And so he went to doctors after doctors after doctors. They had no explanation. Finally, they told him, they said, go to a warmer climate. Maybe that would help. So they moved to Saint Augustine. They're getting used to the neighborhood. His mom is out meeting the neighbors. His mom tells this neighbor what the challenges the kid has. And the neighbor tells her, well, look, I'm an emergency room doctor. I studied with a specialist in California. I know exactly what he has. This guy that was my teacher, this is his area of expertise. It's the certain syndrome. He can get on a protocol and he can live a healthy life. And it's exactly what happened. He's on this protocol. He's not totally healthy, but he's 95%. He's studying at Purdue University now to become a lawyer for sports team. Because when he was growing up, all he could do was lay in bed and watch baseball. So he's got all the statistics down. That's what he's going to do. And so when the kids come in, I'm the one that brings them back to the panel. And I'll just tell them, I say, you know, you're going to go in here and they're, you know, and I don't know if you're going to win it, but I know you're a winner. And I know you've got something wonderful and powerful to do. And you now have this whole community that's going to be with you every step of the way. So I think it's a great thing. And that's just coming up. The other thing that we do, we do a lot of stuff. We support the food bank here, which is important right now. We also have another program. It's called the Elizabeth Clare Fund. This is for my dear friend who was the former minister here. And she asked us to come up with a program to help women, young women. And so what we do with this fund is for women who've been in the shelters for violence. You know, they get 60 days in protective shelters, but after the 60 days, there's no help for them. And there's no help for them to get back get a job or get employment going. And so what we do is we give them money for nursing school sometimes, or for lab training, to open up a business. here, you can open up a cleaning service, because we're a big resort area. So, lots of hotels and stuff. And you can, for just a couple of $100s, you can get a cleaning business going, and you got economic freedom. Because unless they get some economic freedom, the percentages are they go back to the abusers.
Right.
So what I tell my congregation is, we're here to make the world a better place. And this is the thing, John and Tamara. I think that the Christian organizations took the ministry of Jesus and said, we're going to make the world a better place, and we're going to do it through guilt and shame.
Yeah.
We're going to guilt and shame you into doing the right thing. And boy, howdy, guilt and shame are wonderful fundraisers. I tell the congregation, you give me guilt and shame, I'll give you a cathedral in 3 years with, and I don't even want, I used to joke, I want my statue on the top of it. I don't even want that. I just want a nacho cheese bar dedicated in my name. But it doesn't work. It doesn't work because of the vibration. Yeah. If you're doing it in that guilt and shame, it's not even helping the people receiving your aid. Right. We have to turn that around, and through joy and through love, to have so much love, it is overflowing. And then when we get out there and we help people, we're going to create a new heaven and a new earth.
Amen.
Here.
Amen. Well, it's one of the things that you talked about is the using the guilt and shame. Guilt and shame are just products of fear, right? And in the book of John, it says, no fear can exist in perfect love. So that's what you are bringing to Saint Augustine, Ken. I think it's lovely. Tamara, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I love it. I love it so much. I wish every church were like that, just bringing love into the world, raising the vibration, doing actual good work, and letting people know that they can actually feel good in their lives and still make it to the Holy Land. Because this is the Holy Land, right? And when we live in love and we live as love, we experience spirit every moment.
Yes.
So Ken, we're coming up towards the end here. So why don't you tell people how to get a hold of you and
sure,
learn more about you and stuff?
Sure. You can look us up on YouTube, because we do a lot of videos on YouTube. CSL Saint Augustine. If you just punch that in on YouTube, you'll find our site. And I try to do a couple of videos a week on YouTube. And if you want to look up our website, it's cslstaintaugustine.org.
Great. That's wonderful.
And also, if you want to read my stuff on Amazon, this is Whispers of Heaven, and this is about my some of my funny stories here in Saint Augustine. Do we have time for one more, John?
One more quick story, sure, real quick.
Sure. All right. So I first got here, I was walking to the grocery store. There was a homeless guy, and he had passed out. And as I was walking close to him, it looked like I kept focused on his thumb, because it looked like his thumb was in the worst condition ever. And it looked horrible. It looked like it was just gnarled. I thought I could see bone and gnarled flesh. And so in my mind, I was new here. In my mind, what had happened to him is he'd fallen asleep and an alligator had gotten a hold of his thumb. That's what I was thinking. I get close to him, I look down, and it's not his thumb at all. He's holding a chicken wing. Chicken wing. So there was a attendant. He saw this. He said, "That's Miss Betty in the deli." He says and when the chicken gets old, she'll give it to the homeless people rather than throw it out. He says if the management knew, they would fire her, but she says she's not going to throw away food when there are hungry people about. Right. Now, see what I had done? I had allowed my fear to take what was really an act of kindness and generosity and just within seconds blow it up to bloodthirsty alligators on the loose.
Right.
It was a blessing right in front of me.
But you probably learned that as a child, because that's what happened to Captain Hook.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, that was the thing with when the hurricanes came through, they sent out this big warning, or that was a thing that was going on, is they have a big alligator farm here. And it was like, oh my God, the waters have come up to the alligator farms and the alligators are on the loose.
Well, this has been absolutely lovely, Ken. Thank you so much for being here today. It's been lovely. Tamara, you want to take us out of this thing?
Do. Oh, I hope everyone enjoyed that as much as I did. Thank you so much, Ken. You're just a big ray of sunshine. Thank you, John, for your humor and guidance in this time of Spirit Cafe. So listeners, let us know what you think and go visit Ken on all his sites and his Center for Spiritual Living and read his books. I know I'm going to. And tell us what you think. And we will talk to you again next week.
Thank you for joining us at Spirit Cafe, a place where you can safely explore your spirituality without the guilt or dogma of religion. Leave all comments and suggestions on the Spirit Cafe podcast Facebook page.